This is part 2 on the family history of Dibbin family. Part 1 will link, along with this video, somewhere or on his profile. In September 2025, while in the Newfoundland archives, the record was found to link today's Dibbin family to one man, sort of. His name was already known, Thomas Dibbin, the man who was sued in 1812 for moving someone else's boat and park his in the same spot. No records mention him and the other Dibbins, John, George, Robert, William, and one descendant from Richard together. But one baptism record from the 1810s did have Thomas as father. From 1816, Thomas's unknown wife, now known as Mary, had a daughter named Anne, born about 3 years after Richard Dibbin, which probably means Thomas is also Richard's father, but there's more evidence to go over. But first, the new information on Thomas Dibbin. Passed away in Bowles Cove on September 30th, 1852, and is sent for his age when the death record states, age not clear, but most 100. So his date of birth is not known, but he was born after 1752. More of this later. His wife Mary passed away 20th July 1846, age 65. Put her birth year around 1781. Her last name is lost to time, which means her family line is also lost to time. Now, new information on her children. New discovery: the only known daughter, Anne, as mentioned, born 1816, and nothing else is known. Robert Dibbin, his death record is still not known, but only look at records before 1870 while in the archives, so he could have been passed on after 1870. His marriage record was found, wife named Elizabeth Whitley, of Bruin, wed 1830. John Dibbin passed away June 18, 1860, age 60, in Bowles Cove, making his year of birth around 1800. George Dibbin passed away March 23, 1856, in Bruin, age around 50 years, making his birth year around 1806. And just to recap on the other two, William Dibbin passed sometime before 1864 in Prince Edward Island, but the only connection to Bruin was his daughter being born there named Anne. My distant grandfather, Richard Dibbin, born in 1813 in Bowles Cove, moved to Port Brawl in the 1840s, where he passed away in 1891 in his 70s, making him, based on no records, the oldest living out of the bunch. Now the evidence that Thomas most likely the father of all Dibbins from this era was the years of birth between the other Dibbins. Already mentioned, Anne 1816, Richard 1813, then add the others. Robert Williams' birth years are unknown, but guessing their age based on their marriage record dates, they're very likely born between George and Richard. Second, Thomas and wife Mary passed before the other Dibbins finished having their children. They're the oldest Dibbins to pass before 1860, had their last known child in 1816. All other Dibbins started having their kids in the 1830s. And the last piece is religion. All their records before mid-1840s were on the Methodist faith. From the mid-1840s onwards, all records, baptism and death, including Thomas's death record, were in the Church of England, meaning with the exception of one, more on later, the Dibbins at the time converted to the same religion. There was no other evidence that can challenge what I just mentioned. Thomas Dibbin is the father of these Dibbins, and the father of all Dibbins from and rooted in Newfoundland, but he's not the oldest Dibbin recorded. Now there's at least 4 Dibbins that were recorded to live in Newfoundland in the 1700s. Thomas, William, discuss him later, Mouse Reddick, and Adrian Dibbin. There's a good possibility that Adrian Dibbin and Thomas Dibbin could be the same person. Adrian Dibbin, dated 1797, to be from Trinity, Newfoundland, being at St. John's, age 20, and volunteered on the warship HMS Surprise. The HMS Surprise was originally a French ship that was built in 1794 at San Inete, captured by the British in 1796, to be then to be outserved in 1802, spent most of the time down in the Gulf of Mexico. No known records of being landed in Canada other than one just mentioned. What makes Adrian Dibbin and Thomas Dibbin possibly the same person? wife Mary was born around 1781, and A.D. in Dibbin birthed around 1777 in the midst of the American Revolution, making the age difference between the two about 4 years. However, the oldest known child was John 1800 at age 19 and 23 respectively by then. If Thomas was born before 1777, the age difference would be significantly different, even by today's standards, even though it's still possible, but it's very unlikely. Now, the oldest known Dibbin records in Newfoundland, Melchizedek Dibbin, who is sponsors for all newspapers online, being buried in Trinity in 1749, same year as my home city Halifax was founded. Now, trying to find records of Newfoundland in the 1700s is difficult. To find what I could so far is to me surprising. What I could find Melchizedek is more a guessing game at this point in the timeline, which I'll go into why in a moment. Melchizedek Dibbin could have been the son of Melchizedek Dibbin and Sarah Tizer, both born in 1690s in England, having a total of 5 children, 2 daughters, 3 sons, 2 in the same name, Melchizedek. All recorded to the website Family Search, but there's no records linked to Melchizedek in Newfoundland to the 2 Melchizedeks in England. But since there is no other details about Melchizedek in Newfoundland, I'll include it anyways. But what could we possibly say, and this is the guessing game, that in the 1700s, Trinity was basically ran by some families from England that was financially successful in trade and the fisheries. And one of the ways to get labor to do the work was to hire servants. Now, slavery is a well understood term today, being forced against someone's will. A servant, to my understanding, is a step up from slavery. They were treated pretty much the same in the eyes of the rich, but a servant was contract-based. Meaning once their contract ended, they were free in life. Now why does this matter? Because a lot of folks from this era will do these kinds of work as we get to the new world and start a new life. So it's very lucky how Melchizedek made it over. And probably why there's no records of him assists, as folks like him consider nobodies, not worth mentioning on records. Of course, I'm still in the midst of trying to unearth records of Melchizedek and other unknown Dibbins from the 1700s and Newfoundland and from English side archives. So what I just mentioned can change. But for now, that's probably the most likely explanation of him being in a new world. Now, is Melchizedek Dibbin connected in any way to the Dibbin family on the Bruin Peninsula? There is a possibility, because Melchizedek passed away in Trinity, and that A.D. in Dibbin, also from Trinity, meaning at least 2 Dibbins lived there, and the A.D. in Dibbin did move around, because his record states he was at St. John's working on a ship, so he could, after finishing volunteering, somehow made to Bowles Cove in the Bruin Peninsula to start a family. And again, the oldest Dibbin living in Bowles Cove was Thomas. Now there is a missing piece of the puzzle. Assuming that Melchizedek and ADM or Thomas were related, they'd be grandfather and grandson. So to make this theory work and have more concrete proof, there has to be another Dibbin in the line that connect the two. But since there's no other known records of Dibbins from the time Melchizedek to ADM on the Age of Surprise, there's no way to even try guessing who it could be. And to talk about another curveball, Thomas Dibbin, as mentioned, is the oldest Dibbin in Bruin Peninsula. But there's another Dibbin in the area born around 1797 named William, who passed around 50 years of age, February 3rd, 1847. Being born around the same time as ADM was on the ships in St. John's. But a baptism record that might be his said he was baptized as an adult, no age given, parents not listed. And if Thomas and Mary were the parents, Mary would have been 16 years old. Meanwhile, no parents were listed on the baptism because of the taboo of the time, which is probably unlikely to happen. But it's just a guessing game at this point. And when I say might be his baptism record, is because another Dibbin, also named William, who was the exception I mentioned earlier, with a wife named Mary, last name started with a D, had a child baptized Elizabeth in February 1844 under Roman Catholic faith. And this was discovered by accident when looking at another part of my family tree. So try to simplify. The oldest Dibbin recorded in Newfoundland is Melchizedek Dibbin in Trinity. Next is Todd Dibbin, who was born sometime after 1752. Then 88 Dibbin, also from Trinity, who would possibly be Thomas, volunteered in Age of Surprise in St. John's in 1797. Then William Dibbin was born also in 1797 in Bulls Cove on the Bruin Peninsula. There around 1800, Thomas and wife Mary had, to say with confidence, their first known child, John. More discoveries of the Dibbin family tree in Newfoundland were found, but of course, more questions pop up than answers. I already mentioned earlier, I'm still looking for more records from the 1700s that mention Dibbins in Newfoundland. But when honestly, I know I'm starting to come to the end of this branch of my family tree. But if more information comes up, there will be a part 3 to hopefully paint a clearer picture.